1 year, 365 days, 12 months, 2020 was a doozy in a lot of ways, but it also brought us to you. Our inaugural guest, Jamie Hersch, helps us celebrate the 1 year mark here at Bardown Beauties. Plus, we'll reminisce on everything that went down in this last year, all in episode 54.
Hunters, fishermen, and Minnesota sports fans, new and old, locally owned and operated Soda Stick offers the widest variety of gear and garb to dress you and your fandoms. Toss it back old school with Remember the Metrodome tee, or look sharp with any of their latest McGolden Light collaboration collection. Add that Bardown Beauties promo code at checkout for free shipping on all purchases. Hello, everybody. What's happening? Episode 54. We done it. We done it. We are 1 year in to Bardown Beauties. We need like the little horns, get a little music going. Fred, round of applause. So, before we dive into anything, which isn't going to be a lot, we're actually going to just
reminisce.
Scratch everything. We're going to reminisce. Yes, talk about the journey that brought us here to your earbuds, and really appreciate you. But we want to say thank you, seriously, to every single one of you for checking us out, giving us all the love and support imaginable. I don't think I really... When Fred brought this idea to me over a year ago, I was like, who the heck is going to want to listen to me talk about nobody wants to read me write about hockey, let alone listen to me. But you guys have somehow managed to enjoy Alexis, Fred, and I. So thank you for that. Truly, truly appreciative. Shout out to sodastick.com as well for jumping on board as our early sponsors. They're celebrating a year with us. So thank you to them.
Literally week 1.
Yes. Like before I was
been here.
I remember when we got that email, they're like, will be your sponsor. I'm like, do you want to know what the podcast is about? Or we're going with it? They're like, nope, that sounds good. So shout out to Landon and crew there. You guys are awesome. And then shout out to Talk North, our newest addition to the family. So we appreciate all of the help that they've been giving us in exposing us and putting our audio out there.
Yeah, it's been a crazy journey because you thought like the idea in general was crazy when it was first brought to you. I still remember getting a text from a number that I didn't know, standing in my living room thinking someone wants to start a podcast with me. I briefly know this name. I think I know who this is.
Lie. You had no idea. You're like, I don't know who this
person is. I was like, I'm
is.
pretty sure I see her in the press box. It sounds familiar. She's always got a cute outfit on. So it's crazy because we truly, the three of us, really, I mean, you and Fred knew each other. But I didn't know Fred at all. And Jesse, you and I never said more to each other than cute shoes in the press box, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was the extent of our relationship. So it truly is. I know we talked about this in episode 1, but I'm sure we've got so many new listeners since then who's probably never heard the real story of how we came together and kind of how this all came to be.
How quickly it came together. I will say it was kind of, we hopped on the train and off we went and we're like, here we go. So it is. It's kind of, it's pretty hilarious. Alexis, what did you think when I had approached you and said, hey, do you want to do this podcast with me even though we don't know each other?
Well, it was crazy because this was, mid-December of 2019. So the world hadn't turned upside down yet, right? Life was normal. I'm going about my work. I'm doing my jobs. I'm enjoying life. And I get a text from a number I don't know saying, hey, Kevin Gorg passed your info along to me. Do you want to join a podcast with me? I think it would be fun.
I should interrupt you. Gorgie was so excited when I brought your name up. I was like, hey, Kevin, you seem to know Alexis pretty well. I will never forget. We were sitting, it was before a morning skate at Tria, and I was just sitting kind of shooting it with him. And he was like, oh, Alexis? Yeah. And he grabs my phone and punches your number. And he's like, no, text her right now and see what she says. I'm like, well, I'm going to, okay. I was all nervous, which is funny because I don't get nervous talking to people, but I'm like, I feel weird just sending this message to this random chick. So he was Kevin very excited and endorsed you very highly. He was like, Alexis will be perfect for this for you. The Buttes. And that, we had Kevin on board right away.
Right. Yeah. He, and he was one of our first guests too. I think episode maybe 3 or 2, something like that. Yeah. We had him on. So yeah, Kevin is a very enthusiastic, friend, and I absolutely adore him. And so I appreciate, his, stamp of approval when you reached out to me. But yeah, it was crazy because I was like, oh, podcast, I love talking hockey. Sure, sounds fun. And we literally, Jesse, you and I went out to lunch at Chipotle. That was the first time that we had an actual conversation.
I was like, I'm gonna wine and dine this girl. I'm taking her to Chipotle.
Look at us now, a year later. It's cute. Yeah, so we went to Chipotle and you kind of presented the idea to me and I was like, sure, sounds like fun. Why not? And everything was kind of a loose idea still at that point. We didn't even have a name set in place yet. And literally we ordered equipment online, and by the end of the month we had recorded our first episode. And it literally, it felt like it happened so fast. And still, when I look back to that time, that's not really what I think about. I think about more so the amount of support that people gave us when that first episode came out. Like, holy crap, you got Jamie Hersch on episode 1. Like, that is huge. Like, congratulations. I'm so excited. I can't wait to listen. Like, you know, all of this stuff. And that was still the thing that stands out to me, I think, the most out of everything that kind of happened in those first few weeks. And it was just, you know, I remember sitting at Fred's kitchen table, you know, recording our first episode, and still we barely knew each other at this point, right? We're just trying to throw something together, and then
I mean, luckily we're not shy girls, right?
No.
Like, honestly, because there have been so many people that have asked me that through the time, like, oh, so you and Alexis have been friends? I'm like, no, I mean, we really just kind of met each other, and it works really, really well, which is part of the reason. But I mean, we have to give a shout out to producer Fred here, because truly it wouldn't have been a thing. I know I've shared my version of how it came about, how you were just like, Jesse, you're amazing, please do this with me. But I mean, Fred, what was your idea behind starting this, and why us?
I wouldn't say.
Why are
I wouldn't
you still
say
around, Fred? We haven't scared you yet.
I wouldn't say that it was me that was like, do this with me. I was just said, hey, you should have your own podcast. He said, okay, let's have a breakfast as a producer meeting. I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to be a part of this.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to just like steal your idea. And I was like, I don't know what exactly to do. I don't want to steal this idea or anything. Plus, I wanted you to pay for a really great breakfast, which you did.
Yeah,
so thank you. It was delightful.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is just I wanted us to step into the void prepared and step into the void ready to go and put the best thing out there possible. And I think, I mean, looking back at all of the guests that we've had is just crazy. But it's also, we haven't actually been in person for a podcast since episode 11.
Yeah.
Do you remember who the guest was?
Episode 11? Was
Backup
it
Giles and Micheletti?
Yeah.
No. Or Connor Beaupre.
Yeah, Connor Beaupre. He was the last guest
I forgot
in person.
that I photoshopped Micheletti and Giles' photo on. Yes, it was when it was at the X, right before
right before tournament. Yeah, it was tournament time. Last time we were actually in person. Now we're on episode 54. That is insane to me.
Yeah,
it's insane that we have made it through all of this. I think there were parts where I'm like, we're all going a little crazy. We don't know what's happening. There's no hockey. How do you have a hockey podcast without hockey? No hockey? How are we going to be able to talk to? Because again, I think a part of the reason that we thought, you know, Alexis and I were going to do really well at this as well is because we had that behind the scenes access. We're at the games. I'm at practice. We're doing all this, and we're like
at all different levels: men's hockey, women's hockey, high school. I mean, we had so many different avenues that we could have gone down. And I think, I agree. That's what excited us a lot. We were like, we can bring so many perspectives that the average 2 podcast hosts might not be able to bring. And that really inspired us to be like, wow, we can really have this like all encompassing podcast where everyone is here. We've got behind the scenes news. We've got, you know, hockey players. We've got all this stuff going on, broadcasters, everyone we want on the podcast because we have those connections. So why not use them? And then hockey just stopped and we're like, okay. So
Twice. Stopped twice.
Off seasons. Like I was already a little nervous about off season 1, but I was like, we got the beauty league. I'm at the beauty league all the time. I'll grab all these people and I'm like, we get nothing. You get nothing is basically what it came down to. But it has been, I mean, again, shout out to the guests because that they've been so great at being like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be on. I mean, it's funny, you know, people have asked me, how have you gotten so-and-so? And again, I've been in this industry for 10 years. So I've been lucky enough to like cross paths with a lot of different people, but I haven't had to really twist anyone's arm to hop on, which is what makes it so exciting to me. Like
Pat Micheletti even asked us to come on like every other week. I mean, we have people lining up to come on the podcast, and the line is just Pat right now, but it might be longer at some point.
I know, right? Like people can jump in behind him. Feel free if you guys want to join. But yeah, it is. It's really cool. And again, shout out to you guys. I can't thank you all enough. It's funny because you still see, again, not to go into it, but women in sports and men usually are attacking that. I don't think we've received one negative comment about anything that we've put out there, really. I mean, there's chirping going on, but that's what makes it fun. You want to come at me for my takes? I love it. Let's go. You know, it makes it fun, but there's never been anybody that's been downright mean or said something, you know, derogatory.
You can't do that.
And I love that.
I will say, I am seeing, like, just recently, I'm starting to see other podcasts start to kind of pop up here, pop up there, and just a warning, we will kill all of you. We will take you down.
Well, Alexis and I would be like, we'll join you in a circle and I'll do it together.
Yeah.
Nope.
It's funny because, you know, we went through this year, and granted, starting something like this is hard, right? You hope people listen to you. And I know Jesse and I say all the time, like, we would talk even if no one was listening. We just love talking about hockey.
I mean, most of the time we do. I would say for the first 2 episodes, we were talking and nobody was listening.
But at the end of the day, we want people to love what we put out there. We want people to look to us for our opinions and for news and for all of that. And that matters to us, and that we can entertain you and provide you with everything that you look for in a podcast. And it was, you know, scary to start this, and then to have the season stop twice, and to have the world do what it did. And I mean, the three of us have been through so much personally over the last year that we, you know, don't share with you guys, that we don't put out there on social media. But there has been times where the three of us have had conversations where someone is going through something and it's hard. And there's been business meetings we've had where someone is crying, and there's a lot of stuff that we have been through personally in this past year. And every time I think about how this year has gone, I just am so like amazed and so proud that we have managed to put an episode out every week, no matter the circumstances, no matter what was happening behind the scenes. We brought guests on, and we did this and we did that, and we joined a podcast network, and we have had so much support from strangers, from friends, from family. And it's just so amazing. Like I'm literally getting chills talking about it, because I think there was so many times that we probably wanted to give up, right? I mean, I don't think we ever actually considered giving up, but there was times where we were like, this is hard. Like there's a lot happening right now. And so, you know, again, thank you to everybody who supported us, and to everybody who has reached out to us. We see your messages. We take all of that in. We talk about it amongst ourselves. We share it sometimes on the podcast. It means so much to us that people have followed along on this journey for so long, when more than half the time, there hasn't even been hockey happening. So it's amazing.
I mean, I think outside of all of the amazing guests and everything that we've done, the merch is probably one of my favorite things. And not to like drop, like, go buy our merch, but go buy our merch.
Nice subtle little merch plug in the middle of the podcast.
But I mean, how freaking cool is that? Like Fred, for those of you watching, our YouTube producer, Fred's rocking the Soda Stick Bardown Beauties hockey jersey. Like, that's so cool. I mean, no matter how long this podcast goes, I mean, ideally forever, right? But even if it's only another year or two, we still have some really cool memories that we get to keep with us, not only again in the guest, but in having that jersey and having our own Teespring line where we've got to create. Alexis has done a phenomenal job creating some different things.
And I had a lot of free time the last year, as you can tell, like most people.
Exactly. So it's been really, really cool. And I think that's probably one of my favorite things outside of just the guests. Hudson agrees. They've got kid stuff going on. And I definitely love it. I genuinely appreciate it. And I appreciate you too as well. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it's it's been a hard year for everybody. And I know that a lot of conversations we've had over the last year is like, how do we keep people engaged? How do we put out something that people will want to watch in a time where, quite frankly, people are tuned out. People are going through a lot of stuff personally. There's, sports aren't the same. And still we found a way to go week after week and do fun things and do exciting things. And, Fred has done a great job on the promotional videos we've done when we joined the Talk North Network and when we released the jerseys. And it's just, again, the support that people have had. And, there's so many messages we received that we don't even, share publicly, but it's like people have been sending so many nice things when we got Charlie Coyle on the podcast, when we got Doc Emmerich on the podcast. And it truly is amazing that we have had so many people, like Jesse said earlier, so many people willingly coming on. It's like, hey, would you? And it's like, yes, before we even finish the question, they're like, I'd love to come on. And it's just, it blows my mind. And sometimes I don't even really realize it until I tell someone else. Like, I remember the first person I told that we were having Doc Emmerich on the podcast before we publicly announced it. And they were like, are you serious? You're getting Doc Emmerich on the podcast? I'm like, yeah, I guess that's kind of pretty cool, huh? Sometimes it's like we get lost in it and it's just work and it's our job and we do it. And then you realize once you put the product out there, how cool people find it. And that to me, I think is the most exciting thing, because truly I'm sitting in my kitchen in pajama shorts and a sweater that I threw on 10 minutes before jumping on here talking hockey, and you guys are going to go listen to it. Like, that to me is just like a really, really cool thing. So
I still get chills when I get in my car and I can hear and I hate my own voice, as most people do, right? Whether I'm listening to an interview transcribed or whatever, I hate it, but I've gotten used to it now. I'm like, you know what? I'm not so bad, but it still gives me chills to turn it on and see our logo. Shout out to my buddy Brandon Favre for putting together our sick logo, because I think that really just put everything together for us. It looks so awesome. That's why the merch looks so great. But to see that logo on my radio in my car, I'm like, holy cow, like that's really, really, really cool. And honestly, this podcast has afforded us some opportunities that I don't know we would have had. We were able to help Marcus Foligno raise some money for his foundation. We've got something in the works with Minnesota Blind Hockey coming up here in the second year of Bardown Beauties. And we've been able to do some really cool things, pair up with Minnesota Hockey Fights Cancer. They're a partner with us and help them and some youth hockey. So I also love that aspect of it too. Again, we genuinely love this game of hockey and growing the game and making a difference any way we can. I know it sounds so trite, but it's true. I mean, I think that I love hockey because I love the people in hockey and I love telling their stories. That's my favorite thing. I know we talked about it with Doc. Ironically, he had said that that's his favorite thing. I mean, the sport of hockey is awesome, but then you have the people in it and it just kind of brings it full circle. It's truly phenomenal. So again, you guys are a part of that. Thank you so much. Without further ado, we want to get back into this episode with our guest, who is actually our first ever Bardown Beauties guest, Ms. Jamie Hersch. So stay tuned. Coming up, she'll be joining us. We're going to take a quick break. Alexis, you want to have one final farewell down this journey before we get to Jamie?
Just that, for everybody who's followed along for the last year, we hope you continue to follow along, because we have plans for so many things we want to do and so many guests we want to bring on, and we appreciate your support. And it only made sense to bring back Butte number 1, right? We call all of our guests Buttes because that's, as soon as you get on the podcast, you're an official Butte. And Jamie was the first one. We had a ton of support when she jumped on in episode 1, so it only made sense to bring her back for episode 54, right?
Heck yeah. I mean, we have hockey coming back, you guys.
Yes, soon.
Hopefully soon. So there'll be plenty of us to talk hockey. So Jamie, I know, is excited about this as well. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jamie Hersch.
We've given our Teespring store a fresh new look, custom designed to rep and support the Buttes. We've got hockey hoodies and tees perfect for lounging and rewatching your favorite Wild game. Grab a mask, grab a tee, and be a Butte with our official Bardown Beauties Teespring store.
Joining us now, 365 days later, full circle, our very first Butte and number 1 on the roster, the lovely, talented, utterly amazing Miss Jamie Hersch. Jamie, how are you?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm great. It's been a strange time to be off around the holidays, but we're making the best of it, and hopefully we'll be back soon.
I know, we had you on as our very first guest, which was something that we were so honored to do and so grateful to you. So we thought it made sense to have you come back and celebrate the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. We all made it through the pandemic, which is kind of unreal. It's funny, we were talking last time with you ahead of the Winter Classic, and you were going to go and be a big part of that. I'm sure you were very much looking forward to the Winter Classic this year back in Minnesota. However,
so were we.
Not quite there. I mean, what has the season been like for you with all the ups and downs and kind of crazy?
Yeah, it has been up and down for sure, because, it was really exciting just to be able to have the playoffs happen, which, I don't think back in May any of us were 100% sure about. So for that to come back and be such a huge success the way it was, 0 positive cases, and obviously being able to crown a Stanley Cup champion, that was really great. And then I got to work the draft for the first time in my career, which was amazing, to do it all at NHL Network and everything virtual. I ended up doing about 50 interviews with different GMs and first round draft picks, and it was one of the biggest challenges of my career, but it was really, really fun. And then the second day of the draft was all on NHL Network, and it ended up being 8 hours, which is the longest ever. And some of that was because of the virtual nature of everything. So it was interesting, but really fun. And then free agency, and then things kind of did quiet down for us. So like you mentioned, I was fully planning on spending Christmas back in Minnesota, which I haven't done in years, and then just kind of carrying that over into working the Winter Classic. So we had all these big plans like everyone else in 2020, and there were other ideas out there in the universe.
So when everything, first happened back in March, obviously 2020 has felt like the year of curveballs, right? Personally, financially, career-wise, everything has felt like a curveball. What were some of your initial thoughts, not only as someone who works in sports and in hockey, but as just a hockey fan in general? I mean, I know that's something we talked a lot about, was this isn't just our career that's taking a hit, but our personal lives as well. This is something we all love. What were some of your first thoughts when everything got shut down?
Yeah, completely selfishly, when it first got shut down, I was like, this is, kind of beautiful in a way to be able to spend a week or two. I thought it was going to be a week or two.
Right.
So
we all did. Yeah.
I was like, this isn't the worst thing in the world to just like be with my family, kind of be home, everyone's staying safe. And kind of, we had this whole feeling like we were all in it together, at least in the beginning, where it was like, let's just get through this. And then I remember working, it must have been the Sunday after everything shut down, because things happened really quickly in those first few days. And I was working, we were still doing one show a day. And so I was working that night, and we were all kind of weirded out by being there. We were like, is it right to be here? Like New York shut down, Hoboken shut down, like everything shut down. And sure enough, that ended up being the last night that we ended up having programming, because it just didn't make sense anymore to keep people coming in when, first of all, we didn't have anything to talk about, because we were like, we did like a redraft of the 2010 NHL draft class. Like now, if we drafted them, where would we draft different players? Because we had nothing else to say, because no one knew what was going on. And then that night I got home, and I remember checking Twitter and seeing that the CDC was recommending no large gatherings for 8 weeks. And I was like, Mother's Day? Like, there's no way we're going to still be doing that. So yeah, it is crazy to think that at first I was like, oh, this is a really nice little like staycation with the family. That turned into, 9 months for some people now and counting. But really through it all, I just feel really blessed to be able to have had a job this whole time. And for my husband to be able to work from home has meant, he gets to see our son a lot more than he would if he were commuting. And just to be able to, spend so much time watching my son grow, and he's going to be 2 in April already. So that's time that, I'll never get back, or that, I'll never forget having those special memories.
It's funny.
I had this. Well, I was just going to
say, you had the same thought, right?
That's what I was going to say. I was like, oh, a couple of weeks off. Sweet. I work a lot. I could use a little vacation. And now at this point, I'm like, I never want to sit on a couch again. Like, I hope I'm moving for the rest of my life. I've had enough couch sitting forever.
No, I was the same way, Jamie, because it was like my kids, I'm kind of running around. They're always like, oh, mama's going to hockey. Mama's going to hockey. And it was, it's bittersweet because they get it and I love my job, but it was nice to just kind of be home and hang with them and not cram everything into like the one night off that I might have that week. Right. It was just really grateful for that. But I agree that it kind of got a little testy. My kids, I think now also are like, Mama, do you go to hockey anymore? I was like, no, but soon. I think I'll go to hockey soon. So you had mentioned when you did some of the draft stuff that there were some challenges, and it was the most challenging part of your career to date. What were those challenges like? Was it just kind of the virtual dynamic, or was it kind of the length and the long time? I know we were up very late that night as well watching the draft. I mean, what were the challenges that you experienced in that?
I think the biggest thing was, there's a little bit of pressure involved in being the only reporter, because normally at the draft, each network has its own reporter. So NBC usually has Catherine Tappan, Sportsnet has their own reporters, TSN, they all have their own reporters, because we were doing everything out of NHL Network, in terms of like scheduling all of the Zoom calls with all of I think we had like 50 home cameras in case, because you don't know who's going to go in the top 31. Right. So we had, I think, 50 different home cameras set up, which meant that there were 50 possible interviews that I could do with those players. And I had to be prepared, because, you don't want to ask every single guy, oh, what does it mean to be selected number 5? So I had a lot of help from our awesome research staff that, we made a cue card for every single guy that could possibly go in the first round, just with things about, his career. But more importantly to me was things that other people might not know, like, no one else in his family played hockey before, or, he was on skates when he was 18 months old, or things like that you can kind of color their personality a little bit and ask them, more informed questions. So that was really helpful. And then same thing with the GMs. I knew I wasn't going to talk to every GM, but I think the list was like 15.
that's plenty.
That's a lot of interviews to prepare for. And so again, it was a lot of studying and highlighting and reading up. And I watched an 8-hour Zoom call with Sportsnet's people, their draft analysts, ended up doing pre-interviews, so they knew what to talk about on draft day. And so I watched their Zoom call, which was a long time, but it was just like that kind of preparation. I guess, in hindsight, like people are probably like, why did you have to do all of that? Like you just asked each guy like 3 questions, but it just, that's kind of what I try to do for everything is make sure I'm prepared and I know what I'm talking about. Because my biggest fear is interviewing a guy that I have no idea anything about his story. And so it was a good challenge in that way, because it made me stretch my, limits. And there's not a lot that I know about these 18-year-olds coming over from Sweden and Russia and even the US. I haven't heard of some of them. So it was a really fun challenge.
And last year we had talked about your name struggles, right? Names can be difficult. Were there any names that caught you off guard this year with the draft?
There were, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, because I did write a lot of them phonetically. But yeah, I think I was able to, the good thing too is when I interview them, you just kind of start. You don't really have to introduce them. So I usually just say their first name, and their first names are usually easier to pronounce than their last names.
Well, I think it's interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that, you're mentioning some of these, behind the scenes, challenges that, people in sports media face on a daily basis to prepare to bring people the best content that they can. And I know that when, everything got shut down, kind of the longer it went, the things that I was missing the most about working in sports was kind of those behind the scenes things that I never thought I would miss. And then all of a sudden I'm like, God, I miss my producer yelling in my ear to be ready for break and all these random things.
Don't worry, I'm here for you, Alexis. I'm here. I'll yell at you. No problem.
Talking about my high school sports producer, but yeah, you too, guys, you too. All of my producers are yelling at me. What were some of the things that you missed the most, kind of the longer it went on? And, you got to do some things over the pause more so than some other people maybe got to. But that day-to-day game basis, your entire routine was thrown around. What were some of the things that you missed the most?
I just really miss being with my coworkers. It sounds really cheesy, but we really do have a great team at NHL Network. And that's not just on camera, it's behind the scenes more than anything. So I'm really good friends outside of work with a lot of the producers. A lot of us live in Hoboken here, and we all have kids around the same age. So we have a good little group. So to not see them, it was like, not seeing your friends for that long, which everyone can relate to. And then just not being able to talk hockey with all of our great analysts. So when we did start doing virtual or remote shows from home sometime around mid-April, it was a really refreshing, time. And I think we only did 2 a week, and we kind of rotated. So I ended up doing 1 a week, which wasn't even that much, but it was really nice to be able to talk about something, other than what I'm going to give my kid for lunch today or something.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right. Do you find, I think there's something that I found unique too with all this, it really tested creativity of creators and broadcasters and media. Did you find that? Were you able to try some things differently or propose some different suggestions and ideas that maybe you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do had the season and the world kind of resumed as normal? Or was there anything that kind of excited you a little bit that did come out of this where you got to try something different?
I don't know if I can think of anything different per se, but I know that I felt like the access was better than we typically get.
Yeah.
Zach Parisi is a great guy, but he's kind of hard to get for an interview, at least at NHL Network. I'm sure with the Wild, he's great with all their reporters, but he's probably one of the guys that just would prefer to kind of lay low. And
he's the same with all of us. Don't worry, Jamie.
Don't worry. So I don't know that we'd ever had him on in my time at NHL Network, or at least I hadn't interviewed him with the network. And he was one of our first guests when we started doing virtual shows or remote shows. I think because it was just easy, first of all, for them to log on to Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it was. And secondly, I think they wanted to talk about hockey too. I think they were also okay, I'm kind of driving myself nuts with my kids and watching Netflix all day. So they were happy to talk to us instead of in the middle of the grind of a season, oh, I got to do another interview. They were more sure, yeah, let's go, let's talk about
right now, can we just go and do it right now? I'm free. I thought that same kind of thing. And you saw more of the kids and you saw more of the players with that family dynamic that I think you don't get to see. I know Zach, when he had his NHL call with us writers, his little son Jax was there, and it was kind of fun to see Zach the dad a little bit and see him kind of loosened up, because he can be a little buttoned up with all media sometimes. So I would agree that's a pretty neat little glimpse behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned when I asked you what you missed the most, you said your coworkers and being around your coworkers. And one of those people that you've had the chance to work with is Mark Parrish. And anyone here in Minnesota has either heard of the story that came out this week or got the chance to read it, which for those of you who haven't read it yet, please go do it. Russo did a fantastic job writing that story about Mark. What can you say about Mark Parrish? We all know how great he is, but it's so awesome to hear stories of other people talking about how much they love him as well. And you've got the chance to work with him. You know him personally, being around him a lot. You were mentioned in the story as well. What do you have to say about Mark and just a testament to how awesome he is as a person?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really tough time, and it happened days before the shutdown. Yeah. So we never really had a chance to process it, and like I never really had a chance to talk to Brian Lawton about everything much. Like it was a really hectic week. So yeah, it was the most single intense experience I've ever had in the workplace, but really, really inspiring to see all the positives that have come out of it. And I have texted with Mark recently and just told him how proud I am of him for sharing his story so candidly. Like you don't really get that raw emotion from someone so recently removed from such a traumatic, like life-altering experience. Right. And so I'm just really proud of him, not only for sharing his story and hopefully having that be cathartic for him, but more importantly, for all the people that he doesn't even know that he has touched and impacted. Because there are countless people out there that, might just have stumbled upon the article or just stumbled upon the headline or whatever and been like, wow, like that sounds like me and maybe I should get help. Or even if they've already gotten help and now they feel like, wow, even people who are rich and famous and whatever have dealt with these similar demons. And so that's been really inspiring to see just all the support and all the love that's come out of that.
Well, I know when, when the story came out and we talked about it on our, to extent on the podcast last week, and we both read the story, Fred read the story, and just the first thing that came to my mind was just the hockey community and the Minnesotan community in general, and just the way that these kind of things, everybody jumps right on board with it and is supportive and is, they want to help and they want to, share their condolences and share their thoughts and share their, how they feel about it. And I think that's so awesome. I know we were talking before coming on the podcast about Minnesotans love Minnesota, but I think there is something to be said about the Minnesotan community and the hockey community in general. You came from this Minnesota hockey community and are now a part of the bigger hockey community. What do you take away from your experience growing up Minnesotan and the hockey community that you get to carry with you now, especially when things like this happen? It's like that hits close to home and you still carry that with you all the time.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've always taken away from Minnesota is that, like you said, they love Minnesota, but they also love Minnesotans. Like, you never, there's a whole like, one of us phrase or whatever they throw around. But I've just felt that, in spades since I left, because I mean, I've been gone now for over 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's longer than I even worked at Fox Sports North. That's twice as long as I worked at Fox Sports North. So to still have the kind of Minnesota fan base that I do have, and whether it's people responding on Twitter or Instagram, whatever it is, you can still feel like a tangible sense of like, oh, she's our Minnesota girl, and that just warms my heart, because it's awesome. And of course, I'll give it back. I'm definitely a total homer, and I'm not shy about the fact that I'll always cheer for the Wild and the Vikings and the Twins, no matter how many times they break
always
my heart.
For the Vikings, like always. Are we sure? I'm starting to wonder.
Pushing our limits here, Jamie.
So honestly, like, it's been a weird season because I have played fantasy football since I was in college, and this is the first year since then that I haven't. And I think I just couldn't quite get on board with it, because I think the whole COVID thing, I was like, well, someone's going to get COVID and then it's going to throw off the whole fantasy lineup. And like, I don't even know how I feel about football returning under these conditions. And so I just didn't sign up for a league. And it's really weird, but I honestly have watched 2 Vikings games. I watched the first game of the year, and then I watched the Packers game where they beat the Packers, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, first of all, it's kind of hard to find the Vikings game out here.
Yeah,
sure.
It's mostly Giants, Eagles, a lot of Cowboys games are on for some reason. But if I could find the Vikings games, I don't even know that I'd want to, because it's a tough season, and it's a tough road to be a fan. But
just go to Twitter. Everyone has great commentary there. That's all. You don't even need to watch the game.
Last Sunday, it was so funny when all those kicks were missed, and I was just seeing it on Twitter, and I was like, I'm so glad I'm not watching it.
I know, like it's the life of a Minnesota fan, right? I mean, we're plagued with this. You could have been on Alexis and I's team. We are a part of a Bardown Beauties League. We did terrible, but I blame it on the COVID situation. Being a manager this year was incredibly difficult.
You probably made the right move, Jamie, to just avoid it. And you're still dealing with injuries too, which is already an issue doing fantasy, and then you got COVID on top of it. It's been a tough season, to say the least.
But I will say, I think I'm going to get back into it next year. It's just it's been a little bit refreshing to not care, because it frees up my Sundays. And like, I'm a college football fan too, so it's kind of a lot of football to watch if you watch all day Saturday and all day Sunday. But anyway.
Right. Speaking of sports coverage, NHL Network has the World Junior Championships. You guys get to do that. Are you going to be a part of any of the broadcasting of that? I mean, again, it'll be another kind of interesting thing to see how things unfold and play amidst this, but exciting that this is prospectively coming back to its kind of fandom.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be really great. And honestly, it's one of the hottest tickets in town, because there's really not that many other sports going on. I mean, the NBA will just have started. But in terms of hockey, like, most of the major junior leagues are shut down, and obviously the NHL won't be up and running yet. So it'll be, must-see TV for any hockey fans. And because of the situation, there are actually, I think, 10 first-round draft picks that are on Team USA alone. So that is an insane talent pool to be able to see the future of the NHL. And, I think a lot of people who don't know what the World Juniors is, they think, oh, well, it's just like a bunch of kids or whatever, like the futures game in baseball. But it's so much more immediate now in hockey that you'll get to see these kids, because we're seeing this game getting younger and younger. And every year there's a new 18, 19, 20-year-old superstar that ends up coming out in full force in the NHL. So to be able to see them play for their country, and, it's been a few years since Team USA won gold. And so that always means a ton if they're able to compete for a medal. So we're really excited. And yes, to answer your question, I will be a part of some of the broadcasts that week. The last week of December when it starts Christmas Day. I'm not working Christmas Day. I just take that off. But other than that, I'll be part of the coverage, and we're really excited.
I agree. Again, I can't tell you guys enough to go watch this tournament. I was introduced to it actually for the first time about 10 years ago, and I have been obsessed every year. You see, like Jamie said, the future of the NHL, the immediate future of the NHL. And you've had these guys, Alex Ovechkin played in this, Sidney Crosby played in this. I mean, every name that you can think of likely had played in this, maybe won a medal or even did medal, but it's a very exciting tournament. So be sure to check that out on NHL Network.
What are you most excited about with the NHL season returning? What are you most looking forward to? I know it's hard to even make like predictions right now. So because everything is so up in the air about, how our team's going to play, it feels like free agency was 10 years ago. So we don't need a prediction. I just want to know what you're excited about.
Although I do want to know, do you think the Wild will win a Stanley Cup this year, or will it be 5 years down the road?
Don't put that pressure on her, Jesse.
I don't think the Wild are a Stanley Cup contender this year. Just putting that out there. It's just it's a team in transition. I'm not going to say they're not a playoff team. They might be a playoff team, but I think even that is kind of, up to how guys perform, up to the level of which they perform. So that remains to be seen. But I do think the biggest thing I'm excited for is just the new divisions. We've never seen an all-Canadian division, and that'll be awesome just to see those rivalries. The one thing I'm just curious about is, that we've already heard they're only going to play within their own divisions only. Right. So that, if you end up having, let's say we have 56 games, if there's 8 teams in one division, I'm not great with math, but then you're playing seven. You're playing the 7 other teams 8 times. And in Canada, there's only 7 teams, so they'll play some of the teams 9 times. Like that is a ton of times for like the Battle of Alberta to be, going at it.
Give me all of that. We should do that every year.
And if the Wild, I don't know if they'll end up going and being with Colorado, or if they'll stay in the sort of central division. But if they end up, playing the Avalanche 8 times, like that's awesome. If they end up, maybe not awesome for how it might turn out, but that's
awesome for Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the biggest exciting thing. The Penguins and Capitals 8 times. Like that's like a playoff series, and it is going to be condensed. So it will feel like you're seeing them a lot. And, familiarity breeds contempt or whatever. And that's before the playoffs even start. So that's what I'm most excited about.
I don't know if it's too late to put in a bid for personalized divisions, but I think they should make divisions based on the best rivalries. Like now that you're talking about Battle of Alberta, you got the Pens and the Caps. I'm like, let's just put all the teams together that hate each other and just have them play each other all season. That would make for some good hockey.
Alexis lives for the chaos. In case
I do. I love the chaos. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, awesome. Well, Jamie, thank you again so much for joining us. We're so proud to call you a Butte twice now. That's pretty exciting, pretty amazing. Reminder, audience, you guys can watch Jamie host NHL Network's flagship studio show, NHL Tonight, and On the Fly. Plus, you can follow her on Twitter at Jamie Hersch. And don't forget to check out the World Juniors. It is the first time ever that the NHL Network will air every World Junior Championship game and will continue to exclusively televise Team USA games in the U.S. So be sure to check that out. Again, Jamie, you're awesome. We'll be in touch, and hopefully everyone gets back to a rink, hockey comes back, and we can all ceremoniously rejoice.
Yeah, well, you guys have done such great work, and I'm so excited to see what the next year has in store. So thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Buddy, for all the support we've had for year one for Bardown Beauties podcast. We got big plans for 2021, so make sure you get out there, you like, you subscribe, and you spread the word about Bardown Beauties podcast.
What a beaut. Jamie, thank you so much for hopping on and joining us once again. We're excited to see her back on our television, back talking hockey like we're going to be doing. And it was so fun to bring. Maybe we'll make this a tradition. We talk with her every year, right? Every year we get to come back and bring Minnesota Sweetheart back to your eardrum. So she's the best. Thank you so much to Jamie. Thank you to Amanda at NHL Network for helping us set that up as well. And one final thank you to you guys. Year one is in the books officially. Close it. We appreciate it. 2021, bigger, better than ever. We know it. It's gonna. We made it through, guys.
Yeah, anything is possible now. Yeah.
Anything is possible. So, thank you to every single one of you. Thank you to Landon and SodaStick.com. Thank you to Talk North. Thank you to Fred. Thank you to Alexis. Thank you to myself.
And I just got to say really quick, when this episode comes out, I want everyone who's been listening since episode 1 to drop it in the comments. Please let us know. I'm really curious which of you have been listening since episode 1 because it's been a crazy year. So for those of you who've been there since the beginning, we appreciate you. We love all of our new buttes as well, but I'm really curious who's been here since day 1. So please let us know. Send us a message, comment on the video when it comes out. Send us a tweet. I would love to see which of you have been around that long.
I love it. You guys are all buttes in our book. So thank you again. We'll resume our regular episode releases January 8th. So be sure to tune in then. Otherwise, that'll do it. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you, every single one of you. Have a good one. Very near.